How to let go of resentment toward your parents. A lot of wounding comes out of our relationship with our parents, and many of us hold resentment toward them. Today I'm going to talk about why holding resentment toward our parents is unhelpful, how you can move beyond it, and what healing looks like as you move forward. Welcome to the channel. I'm Kim Marie, and this channel is all about supporting women to step into their most empowered self so that they can live their most fulfilling life. Family bonds can be a big block to our sense of feeling empowered, and much of that often comes from the relationship we have or the feelings we have about our parents. Letting go of resentment toward our parents isn't always easy, but it is possible. We're going to work today to understand resentment toward our parents, how to let go of that resentment, and step onto the healing journey so that we can really be more empowered. A lot of the reason we stay stuck and unempowered or disempowered is because we aren't letting go of resentment from the past. And one of those big things is the resentment we hold toward our parents. First, we need to understand resentment toward our parents. So resentment in itself is the idea of feeling something again and again and again, and we can't get out of it. We kind of replay the stories and the tapes in our mind and can't seem to let go of it. Now, not everyone has resentment toward their parents, of course, but many of us do feel a certain like a cringiness or that feeling of, oh, that's just mom saying this or that's just dad doing that, right? And so what can happen though is we can kind of play that to the point of almost expecting it always and never being able to move beyond it in our minds. Now, when we can hear those things or see those behaviors and kind of chuckle at them and laugh and move beyond it, it's not a big deal. It doesn't affect us anymore. We're not holding that resentment or that idea of playing something again and again in our minds or in our expectation. So many of us ask, why do I feel resentment toward my parents? Why do I feel this? Well, a lot of it is that we're holding stories about what they did or didn't do that impacted our life. And so we start to feel a certain amount of, oh, if they had only done this or if they only didn't do that. Well, maybe that's true and maybe it's not. Maybe what we received or experienced in our life is exactly what we needed, and maybe it really held us back. That's for you to determine. I do like to consider the idea that we're born into an opportunity, and that opportunity will come with trials and challenges and difficulty and questions. And yes, it can seem really, really difficult when we're growing up and we're a child and we're so impressionable and we think of our parents as this God and goddess almost. That's kind of how we're looking at it. When we see them as God and goddess, we think they can do no wrong. We think that nothing could possibly be a problem. And then as we get older, we start to see they're not as perfect as we thought, or they're not as infallible as we thought, or we start to actually realize that some of the things that did happen were not in fact our fault, and maybe it's their fault, and we can start to cultivate some of that resentment and anger and frustration around things that did happen in the past. I want to share some strategies for letting go of resentment toward our parents. Now, one of the things is around the idea of emotional release and processing and transforming our negative emotions. I work in the Solace program I have for women around something I call emotional integration, which helps us really get in touch with our emotions and move through those emotions effectively. Another tool I have for you that's free to download, check the link in the description. It's 3 mistakes women make that keep them feeling depleted, overwhelmed, and isolated. So these are the 3 biggest mistakes, and you can read that report because chances are some of these things you might be doing that also keep you from being able to process and integrate your emotions and move forward around that. So that's one of the first things, is to really honor the emotions that we feel and understand them and get to know them so that we can actually move beyond them and stop holding them as the story that triggers the emotion, that triggers the story, the emotion. It becomes this endless loop, and we want to get out of that loop. We want to stop focusing on those things and realize that as our own healthy adult self, as our inner wise self, as our empowered self, we get to reparent ourselves, okay? We get to choose how things are going to be now. And our parents did the best that they could with what they knew and what they understood. Even if you experienced abuse or difficulty, one of the biggest things we can remember is hurt people hurt people. I truly do not believe that harm is done out of just some whim. No one wants to hurt another being, but when we are hurt, this is what we know. And again, I'm not making excuses for any bad behavior or detrimental or abusive behavior, not in the least. I definitely don't condone that. I just want to bring a little compassion to the mix to understand that having compassion is one of the ways that we can move beyond the resentment toward our parents. It doesn't condone it. It doesn't say that it's okay. It doesn't forget it. We still may have to set significant boundaries, but it does allow us to understand that they did what they knew how to do, and we get to reparent ourselves in a whole new way based on our own inner wisdom and understanding of ourselves. So in addition to having empathy and compassion and trying to understand that hurt people as a way of moving beyond resentment toward our parents, we also may need to set boundaries. So for example, if there are certain behaviors that your parents still exhibit, even if you've tried to talk to them about it, if you've tried to express that, hey, you know, when you say that thing, it really hurts me, it really upsets me. And I'm a big, big advocate of communication because they are habitually doing what they do without realizing half the time that it may be upsetting you, especially if you grew up with that kind of behavior. Why would they know? Like, they did it all through your upbringing, and now you're an adult and you're saying, I don't want that. They wouldn't necessarily know that without you telling them, because that's just how they've always been. So sometimes we have to break the transparency. We have to say, hey, do you realize that when you do this, it hurts me? I feel upset by this. And sometimes that is definitely worth saying, and there are situations where we just can't speak it. Maybe we're not strong enough to speak it. Maybe our parents aren't strong enough to hear it. So in that case, we might need to set boundaries. And in either case, we might need to set boundaries from the standpoint of if they are aware of something that hurts us and still refuse to listen to it or change it, or maybe they struggle to change it because it's just how they've been for all these years, right? Or if we can't speak to them and therefore they're not going to change it, we may have to have certain boundaries, like maybe when we go visit, we only stay for a certain amount of time because that's all we can handle. And that's not unkind. I want you to understand that setting your own boundaries as an adult is a healthy thing. In many relationships I see, and this is what can perpetuate codependency, there's this expectation that we have to be with our parents for a certain amount of time, or we have to be with our partner for a certain amount of time. And the reality is, what we need to do to feel most empowered moving forward is be able to be with ourselves first and foremost, and not feel obligated to the shoulds and the expectations of others, right? Someone else's expectations are not your promises. You do not have to step into that. And that is part of how you can stay centered in, grounded in your most connected self, your most true self, your most empowered self. Now, what would the healing journey look like if you're trying to let go of and step away from resentment toward your parents? There's a healing process, okay? When we feel resentment and we're playing something over and over and over again, we are often feeling like we've been wronged, we've been hurt, and we may feel angry and we may want justice or whatever that is. And so we may or may not get what we wish for. And the key here is to remember that as we are taking responsibility for our own life and stepping into our own parenting of ourselves, there are some tools that we can do to bring healing. One of those tools, of course, is forgiveness. Forgiveness is such a powerful tool to help us honor ourselves. I've done other videos on forgiveness. Take a look at those, go deeper into this idea of what forgiveness is. It is not about condoning. It is not about justifying. It is not about accepting. It may include boundaries that need to be set. But when we forgive, we give it to the future. We don't let it control our lives in the present. We don't allow it to dictate how life is going to be moving forward for ourselves or in our relationship with our parents. Forgiveness is ultimately the key to our liberation and sense of total freedom from hanging on to these old stories. Another key tool in the healing journey is a repairing of trust or a rebuilding of trust. Now that might be trust in yourself or trust in your parents. If you're able to communicate with your parents and let them know if you have new boundaries or different things that you need from them or things that you need them not to do, then that can create a different kind of trust where you're no longer holding resentment, but you're maybe holding greater appreciation because they're actually trying and they're listening to you and they're making that effort. If that's not possible, there's a lot of building trust in yourself that needs to happen. Like, can I set the boundaries that I need to set? Can I let go of all of that resentment and leave it behind and reparent myself with all that I need? Which also leads me to another tool, which is self-care. Self-care is such a powerful tool to help us let go of the resentment, but more specifically to nurture and nourish us on the healing journey. And self-care might look like quiet time for yourself, setting boundaries for yourself, honoring how you nourish yourself and the kinds of people you surround yourself with. Misery loves company. So you don't want to surround yourself with people that are like, oh, my parents too, and this is awful, and I don't even talk to my parents and all of that. That's not going to necessarily be helpful to you either. You want to really tune into that inner wise self or tap into a wise mentor or coach or guide. And I would be so thrilled to work with you if you are in need of some life coaching and empowerment coaching to help you step into that. This is where we can take care of ourselves. We can give ourselves what we need. That is what it means to reparent yourself, to know what you're needing, how to meet those needs, and understand how to truly take care of yourself so that you can heal from the past and move forward in a more empowered way. With care and attention, we really can unravel the resentment that we have toward our parents and hopefully generate a whole new relationship, a whole new experience, a whole new understanding of ourselves and our parents along the way. And sometimes it may require a certain amount of fully letting go. I do know people that have had to completely step away from their birth family because it truly was a toxic situation. And that is up to you to determine, and maybe you can receive some support and help to help you determine that. Just make sure that the support is something that is truly guiding you for your best interests, for the general connection that you long for and the way that you wish to connect with your family. When we can embrace the path to healing family bonds, it can really make a big difference in how we step forward in our life and how we walk a path of empowerment. Please be sure to subscribe, like, share this with others. It really helps the channel. It helps other women feel more empowered and move forward in their life in a stronger way. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.